It is 7 o'clock and time for the council meeting of February 20th. And I'm calling the meeting to order, and I would like the city clerk to take the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Diaz. I'm sorry, you prefer to go last. Councilmember Cloven.
I'm here.
Tillman.
Here.
Juan.
Here.
Vice Mayor Tribiano.
I'm here.
You, Mayor Diaz.
Yes.
Thank you. Have a quorum.
All right. Thank you very much. We have a quorum. We have everybody here. And we're now, if you will join me, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we begin the meeting, I just want to make a brief comment. Our first mayor, 102-year-old Robert Hoyer, passed away this morning. I'll be adding some additional comments at the end of the meeting where we will adjourn the meeting in his honor. All right, open up first public comment. And I do have one for non-agenda items. And we have 3 minutes allotted to each person on that. And the first one is a card from Allison Snow.
Good evening. I'm going to pass out. To you?
Yes.
Okay. I can do that. Sorry.
I will take it and I'll just.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the rules of order. Mayor and City Council, I'm Allison Snow. I know most of you pretty well. I wanted to ask you to consider an item that's been on my mind for a number of years, 25 plus years. It's a matter that is important, I think, to the people of Clayton. It's autism, which is a really challenging diagnosis for any loved one you might have. I passed out some documentation for you. I just would like the city to consider flying the autism awareness flag for the month of April, which is when we recognize people with autism. Challenges of living with autism, raising a family with autism. I'm blessed to have 2 now young men, 24 and 27, both of whom have autism. So we don't really know any different. But for those in the community who have young children just getting diagnosed or getting familiar, getting started with autism, I've included a little bit of information. Of course, the hyperlinks don't work on the document, but it's from the Autism Speaks Foundation, which has been around for a number of years and has been very helpful in educating families about what to do when you find out you have a child or children with autism. There are quite a few families in this community who have children with autism, and I'd like for them to feel the love, so to speak, to recognize that it's a really difficult challenge to raise children that have special needs, and particularly when they have communication issues, sometimes behavioral issues, and you worry about what's going to happen to them after you're gone, who's going to look after them. So it's a complex, lifelong disability. And yeah, people do improve with early intervention and care, but the most important thing I want to do today is to ask you to put on the next agenda or the agenda after, if you have room, for us to recognize autism awareness and support for our community members. I've offered to purchase the flag that we can raise in the downtown. Now, unfortunately, April, being Autism Awareness Month, starts on a Monday, and I think it's spring break. So a lot of you will probably be out of town. We might not even have a time to have a formal recognition downtown like we like to do on the weekends. Just flying the flag, I think, will be just enough to communicate to the community if you've never heard of autism or don't have any contact with somebody that has a disability, including autism, God bless you. You're very lucky. For those of us that face that challenge, I'd just like to lend some support and love to people that have that disability. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Look at that, spot on. Let me know. My contact information's on the sheet. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? We don't have any cards for this item. If anybody else wants, in the audience wishes to address the city council on the non-agenda items, we'll go to the internet and Zoom, and I don't see anybody there. Do you have any, Stephanie?
Speakers with their hands up to speak. None.
Okay, I'm going to close the public comment for non-agenda items for tonight and move on from item number 3 to item number 4, which is the consent calendar, and find out if any of my colleagues here want to pull any of these items.
Well,
Go ahead.
so I just wanted, Larry, if you've got a minute to just address maybe, I don't know if other people were thinking about this, but it's item 4D. I want to make sure I'm looking at the right stormwater note. And can you just explain to the audience the way you explained to me that, you know, the stormwater utility assessment, we know is running at a deficit. We're requesting that the rates remain the same, even though we know it's not covering our costs. And can you just explain the way you did for me earlier today about how it's a ballot measure from the county? Do you mind? Because I know we've got people, I don't know if anybody else thought about it, but why would we be asking the rates remain the same if we know that it's not covering our costs and maintenance? Thank you.
Yes, Vice Mayor Tripiano and the council members. For item 4D, this is an annual item that comes up. I'm sure some of you are familiar. Essentially, there are stormwater permit requirements that the permittee is technically the county, each county most of the time, and each of the cities are part of that permit. And without getting into all the details, it's essentially to ensure that stormwater runoff, rain that goes to the creek, is managed, inspected to ensure that it tries to stay as clean as possible. And there's a lot of elements in this permit. Roughly, I think 30 years ago, the county passed a ballot measure countywide that set assessments within not only unincorporated county, but pretty much every city in the county. Now, the rate is not the same for every city. However, there's a rate structure. And usually, each of the permittees have a rate, and then they are allowed to raise it by a certain amount. And then there's a cap. Clayton's cap is $29, equivalent runoff unit. Essentially, mostly like a single-family home would get that assessment. It's been at that rate for probably, my guess is close to a decade for this community. Most cities in as well that have this assessment are also maxed out. The county as a whole, along with the cities, attempted a ballot measure probably about 10 years ago and did not pass to raise the cap on this item. And it's, as another decade has gone on, it is, the requirements continue to increase. The value of the dollar is basically eroding because the escalator, there's no more escalator because you've hit a maximum. And so essentially the amount collected for Clayton helps fund the county-wide group, and then the remaining amount is returned back to the city, which is used for stormwater. That's dwindling every year, so the amount coming back to the city is getting smaller because the countywide or group requirements or the budget for that is increasing as the requirements increase. So I do believe there is a effort right now to figure out another ballot measure soon because this is affecting every city within Contra Costa, and really it's statewide. But specifically Contra Costa, with each city has this same type of rate structure issue. So I do think over time, that's how it's going to need to be addressed. But because of the cap, we can't increase it. We can only maintain that. And we have to do this every year. And then we submit this resolution from the city to the Clean Water Program, which then puts it on the tax roll for the county as a whole. And each city gets collected. And the money is collected through the county. Then, like I said, the portion that goes toward the group effort is kept, and then the remainder comes back to the city. So.
And the city managers are all working on this together. What we're trying to figure out is what's the best way to go about doing a countywide tax, and most importantly, when. So there are a variety of cities that have their own ballot measures coming up potentially, and we're trying to not interfere with, you know, an area that could take them all down, basically. And so it's been a little difficult. As Larry said, they tried this, you know, a decade ago, failed. You know, we have a working group that is working on it. And so, you know, probably in the summertime, I think actually we are trying to do something at your next mayor's conference or the one after, just an informal update from our group to the various council member and mayors just on where we're at. But it's a relatively big problem with a solution we know we need to do. I just don't know how to get there yet as a group.
That's great. Thanks for explaining that. I appreciate it. Thank you, Larry.
I have a question. What's the amount that Clayton gets back after the county takes their portion?
I don't know the exact amount off the top of my head. It's certainly within the budget document, so if anyone wants to refer to the number, they can look there. I recall, and don't quote me on it, I believe the amount that's collected citywide is probably a little over 100,000. And then I think Clayton being the smallest city, its proportional share to the Clean Water Program is the smallest. I believe it's now down to, I think in the $60,000 range, somewhere in there. But I would go to the last year's budget, and those numbers should be there. You'll see how much revenue comes in and what the actual money that is kept with the overall program.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more in terms of percentage, like the way that you're describing it, the county, there's no set percentage that gets returned. It's just whatever's left. Is that?
Well, so the percentage of that's Clayton's responsible for toward the group program is essentially based off of population. There's a couple factors, but smaller cities pay less into it. But that amount over time, the percentage isn't really changing, but the overall budget has been increasing over time because the overall group requirements for the permittee require more programs, more monitoring, these other elements, that the budget has gone up. So the percentage is roughly stayed the same because Clayton's population has increased a little bit, but not a lot relative to the other cities as well. So that hasn't changed, but the amount that's needed to be kept by the Clean Water Program has increased. Their budget, I would say roughly speaking, may have been like $3.5 million, maybe 5 years ago. Now it's $4 million kind of projected. So that has affected how much gets returned back to the city.
Thank you. While you're there, I had a question on item F, which I think you may be able to address on the consent. Can we do that?
Sure.
So this one represents a change to how we've done it previously, I believe. I think this is asking for authorization for all future items of this nature to be approved so that we don't ever come back. Am I interpreting that correctly?
That's correct.
What's the catalyst for doing it this way now?
It's a perfect example. I think the last time that the state gave federal funds to Clayton was, I believe, in a resolution from like 5, 6 years ago. That resolution was specific to that particular program supplement, and at that time was approving a new master agreement. So it was kind of twofold. And when we are required to have a authorized person to sign the sort of acceptance of the rules and then the amount of money that, in this case, is like 300,000 plus, from the Fed through the state to Clayton, Caltrans Local Assistance requires that there's a resolution that designates who's authorized. And in the last authorization, it was specifically given to the city manager, but specifically for that program supplement only. It did not talk about future supplements. So they rejected our sort of signature for that supplement and then said, you can have more of a general one that addresses future ones. My guess, it's probably a window of maybe 10 years before a new master agreement needs to be signed, and so that'll reset sort of this process. But it provides the opportunity for the city manager to not have to bring another resolution in this particular case. I would say it doesn't come up that often. So, I mean, it's certainly the prerogative of the council if they want to do it on a one-time. But like anything, it's an additional step that would need to be taken. So, you know, it's obviously to get on the agenda and set the resolution takes a little more time. This would just afford the position of the city manager to sign in the future. Now, I do believe, generally speaking, Clayton probably will get this type of funding on a cycle of probably every 3 to 4 years, maybe longer now, depending on how they set up the federal program. So my guess is, you know, the next time OBAG 3, which was already figured out, but Clayton didn't get a specific one, maybe OBAG 4 will be that opportunity. And so yes, this one is more of a blanket approach to be able to address something in the future.
Okay, thank you. Are there like requirements for accepting the fund? Because a lot of times when there are these programs, there's other program-specific requirements associated with accepting the money. Like
Yes.
here, we don't talk about it. So I'm curious, so we're essentially approving even if there are other future requirements? Like, is that described anywhere?
Well, you're authorized the city manager to accept those or not. The requirements are in the program supplement. I would generally say they're typically auditing financial components. Yes, they have to be, they're federal funds, they require you to make sure you monitor certain elements. If you don't agree with it, you're not going to get the money. I mean, it's a take it or leave it situation, I'll put it that way, in terms of you can't change the master agreement or the program supplement. But yes, that's why they want an authorized person to sign it, to acknowledge that those steps are taken, right? That the funds are used properly, and then you're reporting on it appropriately.
Okay, I think those are fairly routine requirements. Is there anything in this that is not routine?
No, it's I would say 2 factors. Yes, it's pretty standard with the previous ones, and frankly, not to say, you know, you always agree with it, but you can't change it if you want to accept the $300,000. Let's put it that way.
Sounds good, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, council, have any questions, any of these items? Nobody? And I don't have any cards, so I look to the clerk to find out if there's anybody out there in Zoom land.
There are currently no speakers on
Okay,
Zoom.
thank you very much. So we're closing the public comment on this item and bringing it back to the city council for action.
Move approval.
Second?
Moved by Councilmember Juan, seconded by Councilmember Cloven. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Thank you. Councilmember Cloven.
Aye.
Tillman.
Aye.
Juan.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tripiano.
Aye.
Mayor Diaz.
Yes, thank you very much. That concludes this. We're now item number 5, recognitions and presentations. We don't have any tonight, but I'm assuming we will have one next meeting on the 5th of March. It's got to go through the logistical legal process.
Don't steal my thunder. I'm
Huh?
gonna say, Don't steal my thunder. I'm going to say a little something about that at the end of the meeting.
Speak, you're on.
Well, just that on March 5th at our next meeting, as many of you may already know, the city is turning 60 years old. We're having our 60th anniversary on March 3rd. And so at our March 5th meeting, we will be having a proclamation, a little ceremony, hoping that we can have some former officials here and everybody bring their friends and family. We'll have some refreshments. And so more to come on that. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks.
Yes. Okay, no more action or items for number 5 on recognitions and presentations. We move to item 6, city manager and staff reports.
Nothing specific to report tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. All right. We now go to public hearings, which there are none. So item 7 is also completed. And now we move into the action items 8A and B, beginning first with item 8A, which is to provide directions to the staff on reducing the strategic goals from 9 that we approved at the February 6th meeting down to 5, inclusive of the strategic objectives related to those strategic goals. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so we are having technical difficulties with our monitors, and I know there was a variety of PowerPoints associated with some of your work in ad hoc committees. So for those who may not have attended February 6th, the council, as a collective group, agreed on 9 strategic goals. The council members then split up into a variety of 2-person ad hoc committees, 2 people attached to each one of those goals. They then went off over the next 2 weeks and worked on a strategic objective, or objectives in some case, for each strategic goal. Tonight, the council members in those ad hoc committees will be going over those strategic objectives with the goal, once we hear from all 9 ad hoc committees, of narrowing those strategic goals from 9 to 5. As a reminder, the 4 not chosen don't go away. They kind of sit on a parking lot. So as we, over time, in the coming years, if we complete some of these goals, we would then bring back for council to decide which one might want to step up to the plate during that process. Because we are having technical difficulties and wouldn't have it on the screen, I will go ahead and kind of lead the conversation so we can keep them in order, and I'll scribe and then send out to our council, and we'll get it on my update as well in the coming day or so. So with that, Mayor, I'm happy to begin if we don't have any questions.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the city manager?
The first strategic goal is public safety, infrastructure, and accessibility, road, sidewalks, and ADA, and that was Councilmember Tillman and Vice Mayor Trupiano.
Great, thank you, City Manager Prebola. I did speak to Vice Mayor Trupiano last week, and we went over our goal and came up with some objectives. For anyone who has it at home or can access it, there are slides in the public comment section of the website for the agendas. And so what we came down to, and feel free, we can tag team here. I don't have printouts of mine because
That's my microphone.
Holly?
Sorry.
Fabulous.
So I have the,
Oh, good. I've got mine here.
Oh,
You have an extra
you
one?
got yours? Yeah.
I've got mine. Yeah, thank you. So, yes, she wants it back.
Yeah, you take it.
Why'd you give it to me?
Sure.
I thought
So
you needed it.
what we distilled it down to for public safety, infrastructure, and accessibility is a common vision to improve pedestrian safety throughout the city as part of the city's 10-year capital improvement plan. And if you go to the next slide, please. I can't see my own second slide, sorry. Here we go. There we go. And the objectives we broke down into 2. The first one is to develop a citywide improved pedestrian accessibility plan that includes general pedestrian and roadway safety, such as striping, repaving, bicycle lanes, safety around schools, and ADA improvements. And then, Vice Mayor, do you want to address the second one? And then we can talk about it a little bit more.
Absolutely. Our second objective was create a comprehensive maintenance and repair strategy for sidewalks, walkways, curb painting, street lighting, that really identifies, again, this is a 5-year strategic plan that we're working on, that identifies where we're falling short on work and repairs, what needs to be done. Maybe it includes mapping of areas of concern, and then a timeline and cost for completion. So, we know that throughout the city, we have maintenance needs, and we want to really see this in more of a strategic plan. And a timeline that can be publicized and can be shared with the community so people know that the work is in progress and that we're coming to a neighborhood near them at some point. You want to embellish a little bit more on number
Sure.
1, 2?
Yes, we had heard from several residents regarding pedestrian access. We've been hearing now for a couple of months some desire to have improvements near the Mount Diablo Elementary School. This isn't the first time that we've heard, or the council has heard about pedestrian improvements around schools. We heard about some around the middle school years ago, crosswalks being able to cross over major streets. So with the quarry on Mitchell Canyon Road heading towards Clayton Road, there have been some concerns about the pedestrian safety along that corridor. And so what Vice Mayor and I were talking about was we've already had a presentation from our city manager, Mr. Thies, a couple of meetings ago, where we know that this council approved to have a sidewalk added from 4 Oaks Lane up to Pine Hollow Road. So that's already in the works. We gave permission for him to access a grant, and we're waiting to see if we actually can get that. And so part of this bullet point here was to make sure that we inform the community that part of that is in the works. I know that there were requests for us to do additional crosswalks along Mitchell Canyon Road from 4 Oaks towards the school. That's something that city staff will have to do a study on to see if that's feasible. I know that we heard from the police chief and his concerns about putting that there. So part of this was to bring this to the forefront and have city staff go do what they do.
Mm-hmm. And the only other thing I want to add to that is just remind the community that there is already a downtown pedestrian safety program in conjunction with CCTA, and that's really in crosswalks from the Grove Park over to the Corral by the Veranda and Ed's Mudville Grill, and then a third one that Councilmember Tillman added, and we all agreed was important, from the former Groveside Bistro, which is now Skylar Bistro, over to the post office area. And those are underway this year. Correct?
I believe so. I'll look at Larry if he's probably
Yeah.
know that more than I would, but yes.
Downtown pedestrian, Larry, yeah, this year. Okay.
And
So-
then the only other thing I was going to add is I've heard for years now just some concerns about the sidewalks, the roots that are growing underneath them, et cetera, raised sidewalks throughout the city, not just near the schools. So addressing those, making sure that they're wide enough for people who do need to access them with wheelchairs, et cetera. I know that that was expressed along Clayton Road from some residents heading towards the city. So go ahead, Mr. Vice Mayor. I
Yeah.
mean, not Vice Mayor, Manager.
Yeah, so my clarification would be, what I'm hearing is then this really looks like something, I would work with the city engineer on a master plan of all of this that would come back to you in a master plan study session so you could prioritize areas of that master plan ahead of others with funding restrictions, is what I'm seeing. It probably, the product of what you guys are talking about, does that seem in line with what you were thinking?
It
Picture?
is,
Okay.
yes, because we do need to know how much it costs. So this goes to
Okay.
bullet number 2 with the mapping the areas of concern, how much it's going to cost,
Okay.
et cetera. Yeah.
Okay.
And part of the capital improvement at that 10 years.
Yeah, so once we would get the master plan, I mean, annually, we'll pick off it before we would get to that bigger part. But if we did a big comprehensive master plan, it would almost fold in automatically once you guys approve the master plan of how we go about it. Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, the next
I have a
one-
question, though.
Oh,
Are we going to
sorry.
do them one at a time and then at the very end do questions?
Well, I think what we're going to do is listen to everybody speak on their item, and then my proposal is to rank order them. In other words, ask each council member to rank order the items, then we'll come up with some sort of a summarized list at the end of the rainbow and figure out where we're going to proceed.
I think that's
If
reasonable.
not, we'll be here all night.
Or all night, yeah, but I think the mayor's plan is probably best, because then you hear all the information, and then we could go for it, okay. Number 2 on the list, and this was not in any priority order, just so the public knows, this is just how we talked about on February 6th, and so the second one from February 6th was Community Parks and Recreation, that was Councilmember Juan and Councilmember Cloven.
So I can kick us off here. The community park is a fantastic resource that the community has, but it is, in my view, I think it's a little underutilized. I've had several conversations with both the youth baseball organizations in town, and the one thing that they struggle with is enough field time. When they want to play or practice, they're limited by availability of the kids, which often is impacted by school, and also daylight. And so there's a limited number of fields, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of kids that could utilize the fields, if it were more accessible by adding lighting. There's also land up there that is significantly underutilized for other recreational activities. And so for this objective, it really does represent a capital improvement for the community park in a way that would expand the utilization of the area. That's really what this represents. I think, the vision here is really, in terms of Little League or youth baseball, it's, to make our fields, which I'm told are some of the better ones in the area, to make them an attractive venue to host events, to bring people to town, to generate revenue, to generate interest in coming to town. So it's really to highlight that asset that the city has that is underutilized at the moment.
And yeah, I acknowledge that the coaches who spoke at the last meeting talked about the challenges of having space, especially in Clayton, for practice fields for their teams. And I can concur with that. As a former girls soccer coach for 9 years in the AYSO, we didn't have local fields to practice on. We had to go elsewhere and practice at night. And to have fields that are available for local teams to practice would be phenomenal. I just wanted to expand on this a little bit, because the way I looked at this particular item was a little bit different than the way Council Member Juan looked at it. The title was Community Park and Recreation. And yes, the community park is a very big aspect of that, but the whole concept of recreation had a whole different subcategory related to that. And in council conversations with Councilmember Trupiano relative to downtown economic development, there was a question about senior programs and youth programs. That's really not an economic development concept for downtown or for business, but it does follow under the concept of recreation. Most cities, and I deal with a lot of cities through my business, have a Parks and Recreation department that they fund, and they have a facility for community events. We don't. We just don't. We're a small city. We don't have those facilities. So if a Clayton Valley Village wants to use a facility for gathering seniors on a certain day, they don't have that. And if kids want to have a certain after-school particular program, whether it be a homework program or a club program, there's no facility for that unless we look at our facilities, which include this hall, Hoyer Hall, or Endeavor Hall. And so if you look at the strategic objectives, the first objective we came up with, which both of us agreed on, was to determine the feasibility of expanding the usability of Clayton Community Park by adding lighting, improving fields, and related facilities. And related facilities can include pickleball courts. It can include a bunch of other things which we haven't even thought about relative to that space up there. But the second item, which I'm calling it an alternative objective, strategic objective, because Councilmember One didn't feel really this fell into our conversation, was the whole concept of recreation and recreational facilities for our youth and our seniors, which are both growing populations. And so I just wanted to throw it out there that we need to look at, as a strategic objective, the ability to explore options and locations for youth and senior recreation programs, and whether existing facilities would suffice for those needs. So it's a two-part. It's the community park, and it's also recreation. So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, I didn't believe that was germane to this topic, so I'm not exactly sure whose public comment is actually on the website? Who's making the public comment here?
Are you referring to the
Slides? Yes.
So a variety of council members and their groups put slide decks together that we put on the website because they were going to be displayed on the TVs as well, but because they're not, they're just on the website today.
Well, I guess we're a two-hander on the ad hoc, and this was not the materials that I had ever seen.
You know,
So I'm just curious how that
created
got
this
there.
after our conversation this morning, and I summarized it, and we both agreed that you felt number one, and I concur with you, number one was an idea, and you disagree with me on the strategic objective number two, so I presented it separately as something that I felt was important, and the idea behind our conversation.
So is this your public comment?
This is our conversation, which I summarized.
Okay. So yeah, it's not a summarization of our conversation, because I said I think that this objective that you had identified here, I think it's important and valuable. I just don't think it falls in this category. So to place it this way and then to put my name on it, that seems odd to me. So I wouldn't do that. But I understand that, that's how you want to do it.
As such, an alternate strategic objective is provided for discussion with this as a goal or as on its own merits, which is exactly what you and I said in our conversation today. You disagreed with this, so I threw out this alternate suggested strategic objective so that we can discuss it, because I believe that this is of importance and falls within it and is germane. So if you want to pull that out and make this its own strategic objective, we could do so, but that was the result of our conversation, and you concurred that you felt it was separate, so I labeled it as such.
Yeah, I guess it's just the way that it's couched, you are making it appear as if this was something that I was advocating for. And so I just want to be really clear, it's not. And somehow these all got here. And then when I look at it, these objectives that are on the slides are different than the ones that you had sent out to all of us. I think you've removed one for some reason, and I'm not really clear on why that was done. So just, we can get to that one because that was number 5. But here it's missing. So I'm not sure why, but we could address that when we get to it. But on this one, the one area that I think we concurred on was what I spoke on and what you said was first. The second one, I think, is, like I said, I think important, but would be segregated from what we're talking about here.
And again, I presented it as an alternate objective because you disagreed with my take on it, and I think it's important in light of my conversations with Vice Mayor Tripiano relative to her conversations about senior facilities. And that's why I included it in this topic. It's more of a recreation topic than it is an economic development topic, and that's why we include it.
And again, that's your opinion. That's also not my opinion, because I talked about the community center at the last meeting as part of economic development and a vibrant community, and I think you did slides for the economic development that I haven't seen either. So I would ask you not to share those, because I want to make sure that this is, right, that's why we paired up, to be talking about these things together, not to present one side versus another. And I do want to talk about the community center in terms of economic development. So I'm just interjecting
and that's one of
there.
the reasons why I didn't think it fell here, because I know that you had spoken about it at length on multiple occasions as a component of economic development. And so to put it here and then try to slide it into this one it just seemed really odd to me. So yeah, I mean, I think, if you just mentioned you haven't seen the slides, I've never seen them either, and so it just seems odd to say, like, here are the slides from our committees, or just, you know, the various two-hander committees, but half the committee hasn't seen it. So I'm not sure how that happened, but that doesn't seem like, that seems out of bounds to me. But you can do what you like.
Appreciate your comment.
Okay, have we discussed objective number 2? All right, Mr. City Manager.
All right, so strategic goal number 3 was economic development, promoting available spaces, growing number of families in the community, improve downtown activity. That was Vice Mayor Tripiano and Councilmember Cloven.
And again, I'll take the lead on this. I have not seen any slides that you've prepared. I know you tried to show me as the meeting was starting, but let's just talk about what we talked about in emails and conversation back and forth, and that we all agree that we want a vibrant downtown. We want one that not only our community, but people from other communities comes to visit, and we want to give them even more reasons to do that. We have music in the park, and we have a great 4th of July parade, and we have a classic car show, but we want other reasons to bring them downtown. So the first thing that we talked about in emails back and forth, and then in our actual phone conversation yesterday, was about doing some kind of economic development analysis of the downtown. And we know that this was done, Councilmember Cloven said he heard 13 years ago. I don't know if we know where that is, but I wasn't really sure of the relevance of something done 13 years ago. Not that I would be opposed to looking at it and seeing what we incorporated and how it may have benefited the downtown, but I really want to look at the downtown and the city as a whole and see what spaces we've got available and why are those spaces available, and how can we promote empty spaces, how can we promote our existing businesses downtown and bring more people to the community. But I think you have to start, first, we agreed, with a strategic analysis of the downtown and, pour through that data and then put a plan around it, so.
Actually, you just summarized the 2 slides that are up there perfectly. And that was my intention, is to solidify the conversation that we had. And Vice Mayor Tripiano and I spoke for 25 minutes this morning after exchanging 2 or 3 email. Okay, time is just weird. But it was. We exchanged 2 or 3 emails and then had a robust conversation around this. And the high-level objectives were to engage in an economic development plan, and with the old one in consideration if it's relevant, and 2, to institute a conscious city spotlight from our own space. What businesses exist, and maybe a business of the month through our city webpage and our city manager's notes. Maybe highlighting commercial space that's empty and what opportunities might exist there. There's a bunch of things, making a conscious effort to let our citizens know about our downtown. And for lack of, my concept was Shop Clayton, and to improve visibility of our businesses downtown. So the farmer's market, if it ever comes back, it gets its share of business. And we don't have small novelty retail shops going by the wayside or restaurants to really focus on the businesses we have here locally. And we both concur this is important. So I hope I didn't misstep. But this is a very high level, and you did a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, high level. And just to go back to the community center one more time, whether it falls in economic development, and we'll ultimately decide that afterwards, or whether it falls in parks and recreation, I do want us to have a robust conversation around that, because I do think it's important to provide that space to our community. And whether it's something that's in an existing building or it's something that we have to put resources behind to build, I think it's important for our seniors in this community and our young people and our growing number of families. So that's it. Great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 4, we have maintain vibrant police force, maintaining community policing model. That was Councilmember Cloven and Councilmember Tillman.
You know, it's pretty easy, given what we did the last couple of meetings and how we gave support to our police department. But the common vision is to maintain a vibrant police force with a strong community policing model. I think we've learned from the most recent survey that's very important to our citizens. So this one was kind of a no-brainer for the most part. Strategic objective associated with that is to do what we've been doing as a council, is to continue to prioritize public safety and community-based policing in any support that they need.
Yep, and the only thing I'd add to that is we've heard several, over the last several years, some comments about outsourcing, and we all know how expensive that is, but it also takes away from the officers knowing their community and knowing the people in their community, which is why we have, as councils, fought to keep them here in town. So just to add a little bit more color, but I think that's kind of self-explanatory on why we feel that it's important to prioritize this, and I hope it makes it in the top 5.
Okay. Number 5, we have balancing the budget, Councilmember Juan and Vice Mayor Trupiano.
You want to kick us off?
So, I mean, this one's pretty critical, I think, to all other strategic objectives. And it really is just seeking ways to balance the budget, be it, revenue sources or less spending. I think those are, or both. Those are really the broad level options that we have. And it's really it'll be nuts and bolts, but this to me is probably the most important objective we have as a city. And it's really just to really solve that dilemma of we have a lot of wants and scarce resources to do it, so.
And also, rather than looking at the budget mid-year and annually, to do some forecasting, to do some strategic planning, to think about what our short and our long-term needs are going to be, and whether is that a revenue-generating idea, or are there cost-cutting measures, and to explore both of those possibilities. And like Councilmember Juan said, I thought this was one of the most crucial, because without a balanced budget, we really can't do anything else. So again, I hope this one makes it into the final 5.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 6, maintain the aesthetic of the city of Clayton. Kind of the landscape maintenance district was the parens part of that. Councilmember Cloven and Mayor Diaz.
We, and this is another one, kind of like our community policing. When you look at our survey, our city aesthetic, whether it be the roads, the medians, our trails, are basically our front porch. They're the visibility of when people see Clayton, they see this. And there's been a lot of challenges or complaints about some of the weed growth due to the pretty exacerbated conditions and weather we've had in the past couple of years. And people complain, and this is a high-level thing. So if our common vision is to make public areas visibly appealing in terms of weed abatement, vegetation, trimming, and irrigation systems. So it's quite easy what our objective was. We have a landscape and maintenance district, LMD, and the priority for our strategic objective is to actually fund that. And that it comes due into 2026, and to make sure that we have the funding to keep that aesthetic happening with that budget.
And on several of our surveys that we've conducted, this has always been in the top 2 or 3 that people are most concerned about. In fact, when I talk to people policing always come in number one, but then the landscaping and the maintenance of that has always been at least number 2 or 3. And so it's one thing that if, I'm hopeful that it'll fall into one of the 5 that we ultimately finish up with at the end of the evening. But it is an important issue. And, you know, probably the most striking thing that gets everybody's attention is coming through from outside of town into town, and those medians being well-groomed and presentable and giving a good first impression of Clayton. So we agree on that.
Number 7, we have disaster preparedness and fire prevention, Councilmember Tillman and Mayor Diaz.
Yes, so the mayor and I spoke last week regarding this one. This is also another important one that we felt. Part of what we wanted to do was resurrect, I guess is the word that we use, our emergency operations center exercises. We know that they're in place and that we've had them since we had the fire that was on the ridge heading towards Clayton, over 10 years or so ago. But we want to be sure that staff was trained and that the current council, if necessary, knows anything about earthquakes, et cetera. We know that the chief of police, the city manager, and fire would take care of anything that's fire-related and have a command center. And we would stay out of the way and only share messages as necessary and probably get out of Dodge. But if there's an earthquake, et cetera, and training that we need, anything FEMA-related to be prepared, we would want to make sure that everyone knows how to do that as well. And so our bullets read, redevelop the emergency management training for staff and/or council members. I already mentioned the resurrecting the emergency operations center exercises and FEMA preparedness classes, and also to promote disaster preparedness by utilizing social media and community alert notifications such as Nixle, Zone Haven Aware, the community, what's the W? CWS. I just blinked on the W. Warning system thing. What we were trying to do, warn people. Yes, CWS, and others, just as examples, to make sure that the community is engaged and making sure that it's not just waiting until a disaster happens, that we're actually preparing for them. Want to add anything else to that?
The one thing that we both talked about was making sure at one time there was a documented manual that resided in City Hall, which sort of outlined the steps we would take if some sort of an emergency came in and was pretty drastic. And like Councilmember Tillman said, probably the largest one that's high on the list is going to be an earthquake, and we really need to be prepared for that. Back maybe about 8 years ago, when we were first talking about it here in the community, in addition to having a well-documented manual on what to take place, was that, and we sort of outlined it here, that the members of the city council, I seem to be the only one that attended this half-day training, which went through all of the steps of what could happen and what you need to do. One of the main thing is the elected officials stand aside and let the professionals handle it. City manager, police chief, and if the fire department is here involved in that, should there be a fire, let them handle it, address whatever community interest or media has in the matter, to let them know that this is what we've been well prepared for this, and we will get things back in order as quickly as possible.
Yeah, the police chief and I, ironically, were talking about this at a staff meeting just 2 weeks ago. And so definitely am hearing you. With all the new staff coming in on the executive team, it's a good time to start the EOC training again, all the FEMA classes, notwithstanding actually how you get reimbursed appropriately when you have major incidents with FEMA, which is effort that I am too familiar with coming from my Napa days with some of my colleagues that are here, thankfully. So we will start that, but also I'm hearing community events on disaster preparedness need to be added to kind of the list, not just staff. So whether we're holding workshops, whether we implement some other, more organized process, to have them. It sounds like that has to be in tandem to just staff getting it. So I hear that. Okay, great. Preserving the historical nature of the town of Vice Mayor Trupiano and Mayor Diaz.
Shall I
Go
take
ahead
it
and take
away?
the lead.
Okay. So some of our initial thoughts on this particular goal was that we know that we have a historic downtown, a historic city and community with many buildings that may need additional means to preserve them. Maybe historical designation. We talked about the Clayton Club and the historical museum. And we thought maybe the first thing would be to develop a historical assessment of the city of Clayton, including buildings, home, landmarks, and also determine potential funding sources for designation, preservation. That could be through a grant process. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, I've worked with them in Washington, D.C. Many years ago. California also has a Historical Preservation Act. And we thought about some of the buildings besides the Clayton Club and the museum. City Hall itself is a historical monument. We've got some artifacts in there. We've got photos of our mayors. We want to preserve that for future generations. And although the very building that we're in, the library, is not a historical building, I don't know when it becomes historical, was it 1991 or 1992? We do know that, again, from the community survey, it's the most important building in our community. And we are doing a refresh project this year, but the city is going to have to determine what resources we will be able to take out of our own general funding to cover some of that refresh project. And so we know we've started some LED lighting inside and out through our Climate Tech project. Our maintenance team has done an outstanding job in conjunction with Warner to do some of the exterior landscaping. We know that EV charging is coming soon as part of Climate Tech, and that the county is providing architectural and design services, but we really want this building as a gem, and it does need some love. So we want to make sure that it's preserved, again, for future generations.
Back on some of the specifics. Well, first of all, I talked with some members of the Historical Society, and they have several periodicals there that sort of outline the various history from various perspectives of Clayton, and they've offered to work hand in hand with us on that in that regard. Just very basically, we mentioned, or Vice Mayor Trupiano mentioned the Clayton Club. 1874 is when that was established, and it has been characterized as probably, if not the longest incorporated or running business in the state of California, or maybe number two. The other thing, the City Hall is the former DiMartini winery, and I don't know personally how far back it goes, but it's got to go back a number of years. But I suspect that much of the information resides over at the Historical Society, which would be very pleased to partner with us and to see what we can do to start the analysis and prioritizing which buildings, which locations, and what have you. As you may know, if you walk around town, some other interested groups has created a little monument out in front of the buildings, and they have a little text on there about the history of that particular place, including the Clayton Club and some of the other things that we enjoy around town. So this is something that has some interest, has some support, and could fall in within the top 5. Thank you.
Yeah, funny you say that. I actually have the family that lived in City Hall contacted me this week to donate 2 original chairs from when they lived there and a story about them. So we're working to coordinate with them on that. So the history keeps coming. What I am hearing that I'd like some council feedback on, because it is interwoven in all of these, is, and I had success with this in a prior agency, is a lot of what you're talking about is mapping. A lot you're talking about is things that people could eventually take and follow around. And we use GIS a lot to do that, especially in history. With the city of Benicia, we have an entire GIS layer on our historical area. And so is there a desire when we talk about mapping and things like that to explore as part of the analysis and some of these, where it's roads, ADA, sidewalks, historical areas, all of that is a map layers right on top of each other. And it's hard to do in a smaller city, but it's something we could talk about as part of some of these plans. Can I get a head nod or some comments on the possible desire of that being a direction as well? Or is that not what the council's pleasure might be?
And I just want to add, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, like, to what end does the GIS layer do? Because, like, it's great to categorize or catalog the information and you preserve it that way, but not who has access to it, and then how is it gonna be? Because that can't be the goal unto itself. It has to be.
Good. That's a great question, Councilman. We had everything was public layers, right? So we actually developed an app out of it for the historic side. Now, we were a bigger city, so it may have been more realistic, but all the layers became public for use for individuals as they were either looking throughout the city, or if they had concerns or questions in certain areas when it came to sidewalks and ADA and things like that. So that was our net benefit from a community standpoint. But again, that was a larger city, so the ROI may not be here for that purpose.
Because it wouldn't be, I mean, the historical nature, or I don't know what we would call that layer, but that wouldn't be your first layer when you're building out your GIS.
No.
And I know that, a lot of our city staff has asked about the expansion or utilization of GIS for other purposes. So I'm just wondering, like, I think that's a kind of a nebulous ask. Like, I don't know what we're trying to get to.
We have started GIS a little bit already with our city engineer, and he's been putting some money towards it as part of that process. So I guess where I'm getting at is, as we look at these part of the plan, as we look in the coming years, do we want to think or consider adding that as layers on top of kind of the program as we move forward, or is that not something council right now wants to even consider? I say that because the lead time to do a lot of this stuff is pretty significant when you're talking about layers for ADA and sidewalks and different things like that. And so it could take us years to get all of those base layers, I'll call them, down before we would do things like, a historical layer, or I had an art layer in 2 other cities and things like that.
I mean, it's not an all or nothing, right? Because
No, it's not.
I mean, what you're asking for, I think, is specific to a certain thing versus this as an overall objective and goal. Like, are you asking, should this be included within the overall objective or goal? Or are you asking, is this something that we want to pursue independently?
I'm asking that it touches a very significant amount of a lot of these, whether we're talking about parks layers, or it touches a lot of what could be here. And so as part of some of these objectives and master planning, adding GIS is a part of that conversation to build those foundational layers, and then all of these things on top of it, separate and distinct from the historical, but touches on parks, touches on streets, touches on ADA, touches on our capital plan. It's a lot of layers that I don't want to look at independently, because it's one GIS program overlaid over all of that, essentially. That's essentially what GIS is. So if council has a desire to think at that as part of the bigger look at, when we look at all of these things, all of these objectives, it would be good to know, because when I'm talking with the city engineer developing a master plan for ADA, roads, sidewalks, et cetera, part of what he may look to be part of that plan is, do we develop those base GIS layers as part of that master planning effort? Now, there's going to be costs you'll have to assess when that time comes, but if council feels like that's a bridge too far, that's okay. I just would like that to know that in the front end, so we're not trying to back into that GIS conversation. It can be a front end conversation.
Anything else? Okay, do we have, go
The
ahead.
only thing I just wanted to add is that, and you mentioned our city engineer, but I think it was our community development director, that those 2 department heads thought that was imperative to add the GIS software last year. And I don't know where that estimate ever, right? There was going to be an estimate from each of the departments. So maybe in the March 5th, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
if you could bring those cost factors back to us and say, if we incorporated this, here's how we would use it, and this is what it would cost over a period of time. I'd be interested.
That may be a little too quick for March 5th, because GIS is there's a lot of layers, pardon the pun, to actually developing it, and whether it's in-house servers or it's very complicated, and then you have to have people to manage it. So we can park it, and as we bring back these items to you more broadly with details around them, I can make sure it's at least part of the conversation, and then we'll have more detail at that time that I think would make you be able to make a more informed decision. I just wanted to get a sense if that's even something we want to consider.
Yeah, it does sound like it is. I mean, it's a very complex process. So I would say we would need more, or I would need more information on both the scope, cost, and utilization of what you're suggesting, rather than say, like, is this something that you're into? I don't know. I need to know more.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
All right, do we have one more item to go? Number 9?
We do. It's environmental sustainability, and that is Councilmember Cloven and Councilmember Tillman.
Thank you. So last year, we got entered into a contract with Climatech, and it's exciting. And we did so because we knew that if we did certain things, there'd be a return on investment relative to reductions in cost. So we have to put some money in, but based on reduced water usage and reduced energy usage from the grid, we would actually pay off in spades, and it'd be a good investment. As solar, LED, water controllers, EV charging, this is all exciting stuff and a great first step. What this didn't do was actually quantify in total what our water, waste, and energy emission savings are specifically. And when we talk about environmental sustainability, we talk about quantification of what our outputs are, our use and our outputs are from a water and waste standpoint, and looking at reducing those over time. That's what environmental sustainability is. We don't have a quantification metric here to figure out what that is. So there were a couple comments in our surveys regarding environmental, and so it's important to some of our residents. It's important to several premium small towns, which we like to call ourselves. Piedmont, Moraga, Lafayette. These small towns have a climate action plan that does exactly that quantifies their emissions, their water usage, their waste generation by all the different departments within the city, and then makes certain targets towards reduction of that, and they evaluate using capital expenditures towards reducing those. So the strategic objective for this is pretty straightforward. Let's pursue bids and see what a climate action plan actually would cost to implement in Clayton. I think it's important for us to show that we're conscious of this, and two, it's good for all of our community, whether it be youth to seniors. We're going to see a shift towards this type of accountability, not only in business, but also in public works as well, public infrastructure. So this is something that we've already started with regard to climate tech, and this is kind of just the next step, and that's our suggestion.
And the only thing I would add to that is when we've been attending the League of California Cities meetings the last couple of years, this is pretty front and center to a lot of cities throughout the state, making sure that they're doing their part as far as it relates to the climate, and doing their part to make sure that, one, that their residents are aware of what their options are. And so I think Councilmember Cloven's idea of, one, eliciting bids to see what this would actually cost will help better inform us on where this fits within our priorities. So I think I kind of just, well, what I was going to say is we need to, one, know how much it's going to cost for bids, but I think it also puts us on the forefront instead of us having to wait to see other cities around closer to us doing it. He mentioned ones that are a little bit further out through the tunnel or on their way to the tunnel, but we could be the first in Central County. So that's my plug for us.
And whether we like it or not, it's coming to us anyways. A lot of you got a green bin you got to stick on your counter in the kitchen. I mean, this is to reduce organic waste and reduce greenhouse gases that are from that and putting into landfill. It's going to be mandated on us eventually anyways, so why not just get a snapshot of where we are? And that's the concept.
Thank you. Any other closing comments before we're going to do public comment? And
No.
Okay, well, first, before we go to the public comment, I do want to thank each member of the city council for their participation in this effort. It was well worth it and brought out some great points to be considered in this. And we're going to have to figure out which ones ultimately make the cut. And we're only going to have 5 when this end of this item comes, not 9. So just keep that in mind. Right now, we're going to go to public comment on this item, and I only have 2 cards, plus whatever people may come online for this item. The first one is Jim Whitfield. If you would come forward and let us hear your thoughts. 3 minutes, please.
Please press the button on the front.
Thank you, City Council, for the opportunity. I'm Jim Whitfield, representing Clayton Valley Village. We are a nonprofit organization supporting seniors here in Clayton. There's some really significant statistical information that's available thanks to the Census Bureau. Roughly 41% of Clayton's population is above age 50. 41%. So if you figure that 11,091 is roughly your population, you're almost at 5,000 people that are in that 50 age range. 5 years down the road, those folks are now that much older. And we're reaching the point within the state of California where age 65 population has increased 61.2% since the year 2000. This country and this county and this city is getting older. And we're getting older faster than we're getting younger. The youth population over the last 20 years in the state of California has dropped considerably. I don't know what the Clayton population is from the standpoint of youth, but youth and seniors both have needs. And the needs are for a community center. Our seniors, we're doing what we can in Clayton Valley Village, but we have 70 members and we have 83 volunteers that handle a population that needs to have driving assistance to doctor's offices, to hair appointments, to shop. And we're doing it as a volunteer organization 5 days a week, and we have done 680 transactions, service requests in the year 2023. 684 transactions. Those are service requests to take people to hospitals and to the doctor's offices, and et cetera. The city really could use a city council representative, or a city building that both the youth and the seniors could use together. Because the more activity that we can provide to the seniors, the better off they are to be able to stay in their own homes and not end up being forced out of their community. The reason that people join Clayton Valley Village is because they want to stay in their own homes. AARP study shows that 78% of people that are age 65 and above, they want to stay in their own homes. We have to help them do that. And we need it through the city effort. There are ways to do it. Don't look at the finances. Put the finances aside. That can be done later. The city can help us put together a community center that would help both the seniors and the youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitfield. Also in line to speak on number 8A is James Sinkay.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I appreciate it. I'll be brief. I spoke at our last meeting. I thank you guys for your time and consideration. Specifically, I'd like to just show one last support for the strategic goal for public safety, infrastructure, and accessibility. I just wanted to rephrase why this is so important to me and my family and why I feel it's important for the community. As you guys know, many of you had an opportunity to meet my son, Braden. He's a 6-year-old student at Mount Diablo Elementary School. Every day he uses his wheelchair to get to school and access downtown Clayton. However, the current conditions on Mitchell Canyon, as you guys have highlighted, they're just not accessible and don't offer safe routes to school for him. The gravel, which is on both sides of the road, while I appreciate the grant funding, which is one small step in the right direction for a small section of sidewalk, that area does not allow him to roll to the Clayton Road access. So again, it's a small bite at a bigger problem. The railroad steps that start at Mount Zion Drive and they circle around the school to downtown at Oak Street. I understand there's some engineering. I had an opportunity to meet with Larry and the engineer team. It's a big cost item, but this is something that's critical for my son to be able to make it down that road in his wheelchair. So I just, I think the why here, I wanted to let you guys know how this is super personal to me, but I do see a lot of families, hearing from Jim here with the aging population, the sidewalks. My father-in-law, Ron Chang, he's stressed to me how important it is. He's actually tripped and fallen, and members of our communities have tripped on some of these issues. So again, I can't stress this enough. I thank you for your time. This pedestrian crossing at Four Oaks, it's a reality. People will cross Four Oaks at Mitchell regardless. So let's make it safe for them. There is technology we can use for traffic calming. There's, through this study of ad hoc committee, I hope you guys will take a hard look at that. It means a lot to me and my family. We use that route of travel. My son can't go the long way. He doesn't have the endurance to do so. Families, when they're stressed on time, they don't have that option. These capital improvements are not only about convenience, they're about safety, accessibility, and dignity of our residents, especially our children. Thank you guys. I know it's in our core values here as I read on your sign in front of us. Integrity, do the right thing, and I know you will. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this item that's here in the audience that didn't fill out one of these blue cards? Okay. We have, I believe, at least one person that's online. Is that correct?
That is correct. Roy Correa, your microphone is available. You may begin.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please begin your
Go
comments.
ahead, Roy.
Okay, thank you. I have just three quick hits during what has been already said about strategic objectives. And just to back up, my reaction is simply that those objectives need work. They need a lot of work, in my opinion. Okay, and there was an issue where one objective, there was some new information that was brought into one objective, and the other person didn't even know about it, right? That's like, you can do better than that, okay? That's not how, teaming works. That's not how a group, council works. So I suggest that there's a lot of work there. Also, the concept of a strategic objective. I would say back up, look at the definition of a strategic objective, what it represents, and because I'm it's kind of missing the target. I won't get in the weeds of that, but I would say look at what is indeed a strategic objective. Typically, there's an action, so to speak, a description, and it can be measurable at the big picture level, an outcome. And the third one, I would say, with respect to the objectives, is they need work. The first gentleman that spoke. Yeah, I forget his name, and I'm sorry for that, but, he quickly talked about statistical information and where he obtained it, et cetera. What's needed here is an example of that, okay? It's just, what's driving the objective, okay? I mean, we can strategically, you can come up with an objective, but bottom line, what's the basis for it? I'm not, they need work, if I can say that, okay? And the third, last quick hit here is simply that, and that this objective does not have to be strategically as part of what you're all talking about, what's being spoken about now for the town, but the concept of civility, okay? And this can be a sub-objective, and it's just as critical as the ones that have been talked about today, this evening. And that is, where is the civility among the staff, the council, so that there is an element of formal politeness, of formal courtesy, and not being disparaging, et cetera. I'm kind of getting in the weeds of that. But I would say consider that, because it's evident. You can look at the post this meeting, I mean, you see it and have other meetings. I'll leave it alone at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. And I don't see anybody else on the line.
That is correct. There are no other speakers to this
Okay.
item.
So I'm going to, although we did receive a letter from the president of the Clayton Valley Village, and I think we got an email, also I did, from another interested party on item A, but just make sure nobody missed those. All right, I'm going to close the public comment on this item and bring it back to the council. Now, here's a process I think might work. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought each one of us should rank the strategic objectives one at a time. And if you have some additional input on it, do so at that time. And then I don't know who's in the best position to sum this. Okay, Mr. City Manager will sum these things up and put them in a matrix for us so we'll know which ones come out. So with that, I will begin first with Council Member Juan.
You surprised me.
You don't
Yeah.
want to be first?
Well, I mean, I think I need to give it some thought if we're going to, I mean, essentially what I think what you're asking for is a stack rank, right? So. I need a moment to consider.
Would it help the council if we took a 5 or 10 minute recess, let you deliberate in your own head for a minute and come back and have this conversation?
Yes, please, but I do have some context I'd like. When we consider these 9 items, I assume that they're relative to the discussions we're going to be having in the next couple weeks or months on budget. So as we put these in a stack order, it's relative to the budgetary prominence or preference of how we're going to allocate our resources. Is that kind of the way that we're looking at this?
Yes, I think, let me remind council and the public, on March 5th, my office and staff will be coming forward with a 5-year forecast on the general fund and on the landscape maintenance district fund. Part of that analysis will outline, based on a few assumptions that we'll articulate, what we think the structural balances of the general fund and the landscape maintenance district fund over that forecasting period. We will provide some options from my office recommendations on revenue generation or austerity, i.e. service cuts that could be made depending on council's direction they'd like to go in. And so I think, yes, I mean that essentially is the preamble to everything. So depending on the direction we get on March 5th, will determine, I think, the viability and the feasibility of some of your objectives. I think it is important that you definitely, I think, place them in the order of importance that you think they would have if we had to make, which we do, scarcity funding decisions. Which would you want done first? I think also some of them, keep in your mind when you deliberate, are one-time costs to get to a certain point. So, for example, an economic analysis, truthfully, regardless of the budget operating decisions you may make on March 5th, we have reserves enough to pay for that analysis to then bring it back to you with what it would say, and that could be a driver, right? So some of these things are less impacted by the operating side, and some are more just capital, which you have right now, in reserves. And so I think that's how you all have to weigh the scale of what you feel like it rises to the priority in that. But I think understanding that may help in how you might rank them from 1 to 9.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting point, because I sort of agree with Councilmember Cloven that trying to figure out economically how, or fiscally, how we're going to fund each one of these things if they somehow require less amounts of resource than the other. I guess, looking back now on this, it would have been helpful to me if we had an estimated budget requirement for each one of these items, and then we had a total, and then we could, I don't want to suggest we need to bring it back again, but it's one that should be in the consideration.
So when the idea was that when we get to the top 5, we'll have this March 5th discussion that culminates in the financial, viability of one direction or the other. And then my office will bring back these items kind of to you over the coming months to give you a sense of exactly that. What would a timeline be attached to it? What would be the actual, what would a success look like for the objective? A lot of what the gentleman speaker was talking about is what my office is bringing back. Your job was to give me that high-level objective, and I'm going to put the nuts and bolts for it to you in a very specific conversation about those 5. Knowing that, again, some are more operational and some are more capital, right? And some, depending on the decision on March 5th, it could depend on their viability. And if you make decisions on March 5th around kind of austerity versus revenue, I can always come back and say, hey, this number 4 really isn't viable now because you've made a decision to do X, Y, and Z. Would you like to redo the list and add a different? I mean, it can be fluid in that sense. So please don't feel like these are concrete in the sense of if some things change along the way, we'll come back and have those dialogues with your council.
Thank you. Councilmember Juan, have you?
So is this supposed to?
Oh, you got some comment? Go ahead.
So is this supposed to be independent? I'm not clear. Is it supposed to be independent of information we will be given at our next meeting, or is it supposed to?
It should be treated independently, because I mean, in the sense of, for example, if you say policing is in your top 5, clearly if I were to talk about examples of austerity measures in, March 5th, I will make sure that our sworn staff aren't a part of that if they're your top priorities, right? Like, obviously. So there is some connection, but really I would like you to rank them based on what you feel the priority is for the next few years of us from a broader, bigger strategic vision that you think we should be trying to achieve. And then we'll fill in the gaps on the 5th, and we'll fill in the gaps again in subsequent conversations about those top 5 as we move forward.
May I make another? It's probably along the same lines of what I guess you were trying to say, and maybe a little bit of what, Brett, you're saying you're going to bring back on the 5th. But to me, I think everybody up here wants to have a balanced budget. Is it possible that that's a gimme? And you call it a preamble, I think you said earlier. Is that what you called it? So with the assumption that, not even an assumption, we have to have a budget. We have to be able to pay for things. So can we all agree that balancing the budget is one, and then we can have 5 other ones? Like, if that's a preamble, and I'm going to call that the umbrella, that we have to balance a budget or have a balanced budget, and you're going to bring back whether there's revenue generating and austerity measures, et cetera, can we agree that balancing the budget is one, and then we can rank the other 5?
I think that's more up to your council than anything else.
Okay.
Chair, have you finished your rank ordering, Councilmember Juan?
I don't think we started.
I don't believe I have.
I think we were going to take a break.
Yeah.
For
You
a
wanna
couple.
take a break?
I think that's what he offered.
Well,
It
I'm
just-
offering a
did-
By the
suggestion.
power
Yeah,
invested
wait,
in
wait,
me.
wait,
Oh,
Ooh, just a-
you said take a
Hang
break.
on, one sec. So I just want to reiterate again what our city manager said. So on March 5th, you're going to be providing us resources, austerity measures, operational plan, timelines based on these 5 that we determine this evening?
Yes, so we'll interweave into them. If some of them require more time, we'll denote that on the 5th. But generally speaking, what you'll see on the 5th is anything that has any strategic objective that you have has an operating impact that we can identify between now and then, which a couple of these do, like the policing one. We will ensure that it sits in how we frame the conversation on the 5th. Ones that might take a little longer, we'll denote that and we'll come back differently. I think those that have a big capital component, you'll see that in your fund balance policy coming from my office that same night. You'll see how we would be able to target it from there. So yeah, a lot of that context will be on the 5th, and it'll drive, the last piece of our conversation. We've done all the analysis work pretty much. This is just us kind of overlaying what you're going to say tonight into that conversation. And again, I don't want the council to feel like you can't revisit it. If we do it, we go through the 5th, you do this, we have other conversations, and there's a pause because we want to look at things differently. Again, that's always in your council's purview to do that. So please don't take this as we bit the apple and we can never go back to it. That's not what this is about.
Thank you.
What's that?
Can we take 5?
Absolutely. We are going to take a short intermission at 8:30. We'll be back by 8:40, so I'm going to give you 10 minutes.
Recording stopped.
I saw it getting low. This is just from general public comment.
It's filled up and on the counter at home, so. I drink a lot of water, so.
I sat them down. Hi, Mom. You see, you can be. It's busy. I know. I just think we did that. I know. I like
Recording in progress.
Okay, gentlemen and ladies, we're going to call the meeting back to order at 8:40 p.m. and continue on with the process of polling each council member and rank ordering the all of the strategic goals. And again, the objective here is to take the 9 and get them down to 5, which is going to be an interesting process. And I'm not sure if Councilmember Juan has completed his list.
Can I get a little more clarification on the rubric, like how it gets utilized? I'd like to understand the math.
Yeah, so if, let's say, number one is public safety, right, and policing, right? So when we look at having a conversation with you generally, but we'll call March 5th because it's the first time we would have a conversation after this meeting. We obviously, when we talk about if we're not doing revenue to look at austerity measures, we wouldn't be putting sworn staff in any of those conversations, right? It would be taken out of the context.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, of course you can.
I'm talking about the math and the stack ranking. Like, how does the math work so that I can understand like what our score actually means?
Mayor Diaz threw an audible on me on that one, so I'm going to have to kind of wing it in the moment with you. You know, I think we can do this a variety of ways.
Is it like 1 through 5, and then you're doing like
either
some multiplication?
I mean, we can get that complicated, or we can simply initially get everybody's top 5 without rank order, and then see if we have.
Let's do that.
3 of you have commonality. I can give you what rises to the 5, and we won't call them in ranked order. And then if you all then just want to rank the 5 after we get the 5, that might be the simplest path.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah, what I was envisioning is not rank ordering them, is just to get your top 5 so we can get to the next.
So that makes the exercise a little bit easier.
Okay.
Because if you're asking me to stack rank, then I need to start doing a graph.
Just because objective number 1 may come first out of my mouth, that doesn't mean that's the
Sure.
number 1 for me.
Okay, so with that in mind,
Right.
and not in stack rank order,
Can I just, I really would like to address Councilmember Tillman's suggestion that a balanced budget is clearly something we have to do, and and we do annually, for that matter. So it's automatically above our top 5 because it's really not a strategic goal. We just have to do that every year. So I mean, I agree, it's important, but the other things have a lot more cost and are much more. Have more chutzpah upon it. So I want to just elevate that to, I mean, up Uber 1, and then go to the next 5.
sure, I take your point. I think it should remain. I just think if we don't have it as a stated goal, then, you can lose sight of it. And it doesn't, I guess when you have it as a stated goal, then it is more influential in how it impacts your decision making. And to me, I think it is of critical nature such that it should be included. So you're welcome to not include it, but I would include it. So I would say of the 5 I have, again, not in order, I will go in number order then, and just say 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. So 1 was, just for I have the list out. 1 was the public safety and infrastructure. 2 was the community parks. 3 was economic development, 5 was the budget, and 6 was we call it the aesthetic, but I'm calling that the L&D as well. So for me, 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6.
I've got
Okay,
those.
thank you, good. in no order. We're not asking you to put your top priority. Just
Because if you're going to
give us
force me
the
to put in
final-
order, I may have to
just
take a
give
little
us
more
the
time.
final item, the strategic objective that you want in the final cut. That's all we're asking
Got
at
it.
this point.
Thank you.
Councilmember Tillman.
Mine are public safety, community parks.
Would you mind giving me the number attached with that? if-
Well,
if you have?
I copied
Oh.
and pasted mine on different
That's
things,
fine.
so I will try to do
No,
that.
no,
So
no,
one,
I'll take it. One, okay.
two.
Okay,
I think it's 3. If that was 9, that's got to be 7, the disaster preparedness one.
okay.
And then my 5th one would be Is the economic development where you put the community center? Because we're not putting that in Parks and Rec? Then
You-
that one.
Okay, so,
You already said that one, 3.
Did I?
yeah, 3 is economic
For
development.
Pete's sake, my numbers are all over the place. Sorry, because
That's
I was
okay.
putting different numbers.
You're fine,
So I have to tell you what they are then. So I want
that's fine.
public safety, community parks,
Okay,
and rec, the economic development one,
okay,
the police force, and the disaster preparedness, because my budget is my preamble overarching all of that.
so 4, 4, okay, so you want 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, okay.
Good, thank you.
With budget over the rest.
With the umbrella of budget, okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Excellent, thank you. Councilmember Colvin, please.
That's okay, you can just, I've got both on my screen, you could just tell me.
So again, the budget is something we have to do. So I can either not rank it at all, or I can rank it first, because it's something we do every year. So I'm just leave it at that. Community policing, it's already been prioritized. It's number one. It's number one on all of our surveys. So that it'd be
4, okay.
4. That's
Yep.
number one. Again, going back to our surveys, landscaping aesthetic is, I don't know what number that is.
6,
6 will be number 2.
okay.
Public safety, infrastructure, ADA accessibility.
Number
that
1,
That would be my number 3.
okay,
Economic development is my number 4.
okay.
And then parks and recreation, is number 5.
2, okay, got them.
Good, thank you. Vice Mayor Trupiano.
Thank you so much, Mayor Diaz. And I am 1, 2, 3, 5, 6.
Whoa, that was so quick.
Okay, so
1, 2,
that's
3, 5,
Public
6,
public
okay.
safety, community parks, economic development, balancing the budget, and maintaining the aesthetic.
Okay,
Okay?
okay, I got you, thank you.
Okay, you're up on that, thank you. Okay, on mine, 1, 2, 3, which is public safety, community parks, economic development, then balancing the budget, number 5, and finally, geez, this was the tough one for me, 6 or 7. I'd have to go with 6. So that'll be my final one. And by the way, I want to make it clear about the not putting the police department in any of the finalists here. Number 1, we have a chief that just got a 3-year contract, so hopefully he's happy. And so that'll maintain some, and that was the one thing that the word vibrant in this thing sort of caught my attention. And secondly, we have just approved a new 3-year agreement that brings our team back into the mainstream of policing in the county. So 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6.
Okay. Give me a second to get your top 5, and I'll come right back to you.
And by the way, I think number 7 has to be by itself, standalone, that it is something that is mandated. It's not something we have any choice, in my view. Okay? And the winner is,
Okay, top 5 are number one, not the number one, but number one in our list, which was public safety, infrastructure, and accessibility. Number two, which was community parks and recreation. Number three, which was economic development. Number five, which was balancing the budget. And number six, maintain the aesthetic of the city of Clayton, i.e. funding the LMD.
My congratulations to all of you.
Does council
We
feel
did
like
it.
you want to put those in 1 to 5 priority order?
And they are not, and
No,
we're
no.
not going to do those tonight, right?
You don't have to. You
No,
can if you
because we
like.
know they made the top 5, and we'll rank order them if we have to, at another date.
That's fine, or I can, if I have a conflict between two in a budget decision,
All
I can
right.
bring them to you. That is more than okay with me.
So, what action do we need to do on this? We've
That is
done it.
sufficient direction for your city manager to move forward with the
Yeah.
final pieces for March 5th?
I think so. I'm just thinking what the desired outcome was, and I think we gave the direction, right?
Yep, correct.
We don't need to take a motion on this, do we?
I don't feel, there's not a specific action. I will take this now and bring back
Okay.
pieces of it in March 5th, and then if there's any bigger piece, like economic development and the LMD, they'll have bigger, broader conversations about the what
Excellent.
we do with that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes item 8A, unless there's some other thing that I'm not aware of. Okay, we'll now move to item 8B, which is to create and appoint 2 city council members to an ad hoc committee to gather information on downtown parking and potential options. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, this is bringing back your council's item from your last conversation. It is really up to your council to determine which 2 council members you would like on your ad hoc committee. They will then go back out into the public and then report back to the city council and myself on information they've been hearing from constituents about how they would like to look at downtown parking broadly, or parking in the city of Clayton, and how some ideas that we could then take, assess, and bring back with some more detail once we hear from the ad hoc committee. So I turn it back to council.
Thank you. Okay, so council members' comments on this. I have a pretty good idea who I believe ought to be on that ad hoc committee. I'm not sure, do I announce that now or wait till we get some public comment? What would be the best protocol?
I think you can do it either way, but getting public comment is probably never a bad thing to do now, and then you can deliberate and make your decisions together.
Okay, all right. So I can make the appointments now, right?
Or public comment.
Okay, let's take some public comment. I want to see if there's anybody out there that has a comment. I don't have any cards on this one, so let me quick look with the, do you have?
If you're on the platform, please use the raise hand feature if you would like to speak to this item. If you are on your telephone, please dial *9 to be added to the speaker queue. And there are no speakers to this item.
No
Mayor
comment.
Diaz, there's
from
no
the
comment, correct.
Zoom land. Okay, very good. Thank you. So I'm going to close the public comment on this item and bring it back to the council. And now I'm going to make my recommendation for the 2 members of the council to be on this committee.
And just to clarify, Mayor, we will.
I'm sorry?
No, just to clarify, we will need a motion and a second for the 2 members. So
Right.
you may recommend 2, but another council member may create a motion for 2 others, or, this is until you get to a motion, a second, and a vote.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in and make a motion for 2 councils. I'm going to, members, Council Member Juan and myself, Mayor Diaz. Is there a second?
I would second. It was something that I was very interested in, so definitely thank you. I appreciate that. I've had numerous conversations with the residents in the area, and it is just something that is, I think, really important. And I also served on the committee that did our other parking program in the city, so I'm well prepared for that.
And the only thing that I would add is that I did request to be on that when this came to our attention at the last meeting, when the public asked for that. So I would just want to remind you that I did ask to serve on that with Councilmember Juan.
Thank you, thank you. I'm not overlooking that. Okay, so we have a motion from Councilmember Juan.
I have a
And
substitute motion. You had made the motion, he seconded it, but I have a substitute motion for
Oh, okay, that's right, that's right.
Councilmember Juan and for me to serve on it.
I'll second this.
Will you please clerk call the roll?
We're doing the substitute motion first. And on the substitute motion, Councilmember Cloven.
Aye?
Cloven, aye, sorry, old habit. Tillman,
Aye.
thank you. Juan?
I will vote no.
Thank you. Tripiano?
No.
Diaz?
Yes.
You're voting on the substitute motion for,
Right.
you nominated yourself, but you're voting yes for
Oh.
Councilmember Tillman?
Okay, that's why I'm asking procedurally.
The
They said
substitute
make both-
motion, the
no-
substitute
both
motion goes
nominations, so that's what I
first.
did.
The substitute motion goes first. So Councilmember Tillman substituted and Councilmember Cloven seconded to put herself and me in place of the motion that you made. So there's 2 yeses and 2 nos. I voted no, and
All right, so-
Vice Mayor Tripiano voted no. I think it just got confused with the substitute motion.
So, okay, procedurally, where are we? We are blocked.
Procedurally, we are waiting for one final vote to determine if this substitute motion passes or fails.
Your vote, and you're voting on whether or not Councilmember
Yes.
Tillman and myself should be on it.
Because you voted no.
I
on
voted
what I
no.
noted. Okay. Do we need another motion for that?
No,
No,
you
we
have to complete your vote.
I said yes. I
No,
did.
Okay,
you're saying yes to your motion, I believe.
point of clarification. Sorry, our attorney has a
Do
question.
we have a parliamentarian in the House?
That would be me. Yeah. That is me, literally my job description.
Fantastic.
Yes. So currently, we are on the substitute motion, which replaced your motion, and we need to act on the substitute before we act on the original motion.
Okay, so the substitute motion is Juan and Tillman.
Juan and Tillman. We currently have 2 ayes, 2 noes.
I'll second that in the discussion.
Pardon me, are you saying
second,
aye?
you have to
It's
vote
been
yes or
seconded, yes.
no.
Oh.
And this contradicts the motion that you yourself made. So if
I
you
got
agree
that.
with that.
Listen, all
Yeah.
I want to do is get this thing moving. I don't want to sit here and debate it all night.
There isn't a debate, it's just a
Okay.
yes or no.
Okay.
So I would say that if you want your original motion, right, the one that you made, then you should vote
I'll
no.
withdraw it. I want to, listen, I don't want to debate it all night.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm withdrawing my motion.
So Mayor Diaz.
And I will concede that Juan and Tillman ought to be on it.
Okay?
How do we make that happen?
Okay, I just need to hear an aye.
Jesus.
Okay.
I,
Thank you. Motion passes, and the first motion will be
okay.
dissolved and it's not used, so the.
That completes item 8B. Council items for, future agenda items.
Based off of what we heard from Allison Snow this evening regarding Autism Awareness Month, I asked her to come before all of us to present that. I know that she had sent us an email. She had also contacted several of us privately, and I asked her to put that before the entire council. So I would ask for us to discuss that at our next meeting, whether or not we would allow her to purchase the flags for Autism Awareness Month, if we can do that. And then I will reiterate my previous request to discuss whether or not we want to have the city attorney investigate council members' behavior towards staff, and whether or not we should also include censorship. And if there's another procedure that I need to follow besides continuing to ask for this during our meetings each time, I'll do that too if you let me know what that is.
Anyone else? Got to turn my microphone on. Okay, there's no other, go
No,
ahead.
and just a reminder that at our next meeting on March 5th, we'll be having our proclamation, celebration of our city, and refreshments. And I don't know if we determined that we're starting early at 6:30 in order to accommodate that. So yes,
Okay.
we are.
No one else. We're completing item number 9. Now we'll go to the council reports. Councilmember Juan.
No report tonight, thanks.
No report. Tillman.
I'll keep it brief. On the 8th, I had a meeting for the Mount Diablo Education Foundation Board with the students to get them acclimated in serving. On the 10th, I had a Firewise meeting with Michelle Reinhart, who's with Contra Costa Fire, Sue Thompson, Jim Killeran, and Tamara Steiner to discuss Firewise and having a risk assessment with Inspector Gittes of Con Fire on April 8th. As soon as we have an actual date and time for the residents in town, we will have one presentation at Jim Killeran's house, which is in the Keller Ridge area, and then we'll also have a home that's in the Dana Hills area, since we do have Firewise homes that want to be in city limits, and then there will also be ones out on Morgan Territory and Marsh Creek Road, and those dates will come later. On the 11th, I attended the East Bay Park's 90th anniversary hike through the Thurgood Marshall Regional Park, which is home of the Port Chicago 50, and they were celebrating Black History Month. If anybody's not familiar with that, that's on Bailey Road. As you're heading towards Bay Point, off on your right, there's going to be a beautiful regional park over there that actually memorializes what happened at Port Chicago with the Port Chicago 50. I also worked, as you all heard already, with the vice mayor and with the mayor on our objectives. I also worked with Councilmember Cloven on ours as well. I had several meetings with our city manager and with our city engineer, Larry Thies. I had Pride subcommittee meetings on the 11th and the 13th, as well as Pride board meetings on the 19th, and I spoke to many community members regarding public safety and accessibility, including existing safe routes, the Autism Awareness Month, and community centers here in town. That's it. That's my report.
Thank you. Very good. Councilmember Cloven.
Thank you. On the 8th, I had a Transpac meeting, and Timothy Hale, who's the head of CCTA, did a presentation to us and really explained to us Travel Demand Management 2 and what CCTA is doing relative to transportation improvements in Contra Costa County. I know it sounds complicated, but the interesting thing is the way that funding is tied now to large-scale transportation, it's not going to be widening our freeways anymore. The state's not going to be spending money to widen freeways. It's all about making things more efficient with public transit or fast lanes. And funding is going to be tied to reductions in greenhouse gases and reductions in vehicle miles traveled. And the whole concept and forward-looking future of CCTA is about reduction in the need to have your own personal car. And the reason I say that is it's, with regard to projects like the Olivia, we all have 3 cars. Well, yeah, I do too. But the future is not going to be that. And that's what the plan is long-term, is that we will not all have 3 cars because they're planning for future transportation, so that's not necessary. And I know it sounds scary to a lot of us who are used to the way things are, but the long-term plans are being put in place for that. Lots of conversations with local folks. The budget, again, is a big question, and how things are going to be affected in the next couple of years. Really appreciated talking with my fellow council members. Some of you I haven't talked to one-on-one like this in a while, and it was good to do so. It was a good exercise. Thank you, City Manager, for suggesting that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the future. And April 20th, as a reminder, Clayton cleans up. I need to start getting a logo for the shirt, and I'm going to start put a note out to the local art department at the high school to see if I can get one of the kids to do so this year instead of me. So April 20th, put it on your calendar. End of report.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Vice Mayor Trupiano.
Okay. Well, last couple of weeks, I've been busy along with Councilmember Juan on our city-sponsored special events committee, and I just really want to sing the praises of Stephanie Cabrera-Brown, who's been a rock star and really, really outstanding in helping us with, we have an RFP that is now on our city website for a promoter for our concert series. And so if you know any promoters out there who might be interested in applying for that, we have finished all of our year-long sponsorship packages. We have a new logo, a 60th logo. I made a couple of copies tonight if anybody wants to take some with them. I'll be reaching out to the community for, the business community for sponsorships. And again, we package them up for all of our events, our 60th anniversary, 4th of July, concerts in the Grove, and the Clayton Car Show. The other thing, I've, of course, met with our city manager, as I normally do. I just wanted to talk about 2 meetings that I actually have coming up in case anybody wanted to talk to me about them, give me any feedback. We have Climate Tech tomorrow at 4, but I'm also touring the county animal shelter in Martinez on Thursday morning, and I know there's been a lot of, we see a lot of it on Nextdoor, you know, these animals are going to be euthanized tomorrow if you don't rescue them, you know. So if you've got any concerns, anything you want to email me or talk to me about after the meeting, I'd love your feedback, and then I'll certainly report out at the next meeting about that. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. My report is as follows. First of all, on the 7th of February, I attended the County Connection Operations and Scheduling Committee, and I want to make note of this, particularly for those seniors and disabled individuals. We acted on, and was approved by the board of the County Connection at a later meeting, a thing called the Travel Training Program, which basically is to assist riders with disabilities to learn how to access community transportation options beyond ADA, using the paratransit to meet their travel needs. And basically what will take place is that the individual can call up to the County Connection office, and they will actually have somebody, first of all, you say, I want to go from here to there, A to B, and they will plan it out for you on how many, if you have to make any connections, and even better, they ride with you to take you through it so that you can actually see how it's done and you learn from that. It's an amazing program. I just expanded it, and it'll be out throughout the entire county and also to adjoining transportation authorities. On the 14th, I attended the Garden Club meeting where they had a presentation on the Tournament of Roses parade. And I know many of us has probably seen those parades year in and year out. This lady actually was down there helping build one of the floats, and she had pictorial display on how it starts with these baskets of roses and what have you, and then they ultimately end up on the float. It was an amazing presentation. On the 15th, I attended the County Connection Board meeting, and that's where we approved for the countywide use of this travel training program. On the 17th, I attended the 100 Club of Contra Costa County, their dinner meeting. For those of you that don't know what the 100 Club is, its mission is to provide immediate financial support for the spouses and children of police officers and firefighters who lost their lives as a direct result of physical injuries sustained in Contra Costa County in the line of duty. Amazing. There were several hundred people out there. I don't know how much money they raised, but they do a tremendous amount of good. Sunday was a busy day for me on the 18th. Started out at the Clayton Club for its annual chili cook-off. I was a judge. I think I'm still tasting some of that chili, but anyway, and there were a number of other people from the community, including a critic or two at the event. But we had 17 entrants, 3 winners, and I will say this, that the finalists 3 had some of the best chili in the area. It was a wonderful day. Walked across the street after that to the Clayton Historical Society annual Camellia Tea. They had 80 to 90 people there for that event, in and out the couple hours that I was there. And Joanne Casper, bless her heart, they had some extra camellias that she took around to various businesses, including the Clayton Club, and left them there for them to enjoy. It was a great event. And on the Monday the 19th, as has been reported here, I met first with Vice Mayor Trupiano, then council members Tillman and Cloven to discuss the objectives for this evening. And then finally, this morning, I met with the city manager for our pre-city council meeting. That concludes my report. And as I said earlier, it was really sad to hear that Bob Hoyer had passed away. And I gave everybody a copy of his obituary given by his son, Bob Hoyer Jr. Bob lived 102 years, and he helped found the city of Clayton and incorporate it and so forth. And he and a small group of people, including a lady by the Nan Wallace, who was another prominent citizen back in those days, they were afraid at the time that they were going to be annexed by Concord, and they didn't want that. They wanted to maintain Clayton as it is today and was then back in 1964. Had to spend some great quality time with Bob during his last months of his life. Just trying to get information, how he thought about the city and so forth, and facilitated meetings with members of the city council that he wasn't sure about them and he wanted to talk with them, and we did that. I can tell you, he just loved going out and socializing. What's in here, he did what was called Taco Tuesday at the Chop House. Then he would come over to Wind Down Wednesdays at the La Veranda, and then he would go back to the Chop House for what they called Thirsty Thursdays. And so Bob was quite an interesting character, a great person, and I really enjoyed his company. And sorry to see him go, but 102 years, a month or so shy of 103. We were hoping to have him at one of our events, but that didn't take place. But the family has, and he have not requested no services. They want you to consider donations to the Historical Society, and we have the information on that. With that, I'm going to close the meeting and adjourn in Bob's memory until our meeting of March 5th. Good evening. 9:13, that's what it is. Thank you.